3 weeks ago, before the Independence Day holiday, the lead story on the show was the competing rent control bills circulating in the Montgomery County Council. Now, as we return from break, the internal workings of the council on this issue was laid bare by online reporter Adam Pagnucco this week, where he exposes the internal machinations of several council members on this issue. Rent control is a controversial issue because while it may temporarily provide relief during a period of housing unaffordability, ultimately it acts as a disincentive toward providing more affordable housing in the county. The laws of economics and the laws of physics say for every action, there's a reaction. In this case, politicians may love it, but markets hate it. Mike, Prussian statesman and architect of German unification, Otto von Bismarck, famously said, laws are made like making sausage. It's better not to see them being made. This week, we've seen a lot of sausages being made. The public revelation that council members Natalie Fanny Gonzalez and Sid Katz have flip-flopped on their support of the different bills has become particularly embarrassing for Miss Fanny Gonzalez, who has been supported by anti-growth and pro-growth supporters. What's the political fallout for Miss Fanny Gonzalez?
At this point, honestly, I don't think there is much. I think, and Adam in his piece actually rightly points to this. I think the biggest challenge she has will be on the next big set of issues within the council. Is what she's saying really what she's saying? Because she was pretty forceful with this, that she had laid out what she would believed in and what was important to her. And then as things started to heat up, she ended up going to the other side. Practically, it's early in her tenure as a council member. Most people 2 or 3 years from now probably aren't going to remember, unless of course rent control gets passed and actually is as bad as we think that it could be. And then it becomes a really prescient issue for her in her next election. I think that's probably the most significant thing, is the practical reality of how rent control, if passed, has on the county, and then her role in that, because I think that becomes the campaign message for someone running against her.
Well, here's what I think. I think any wavering on straight issues that are supported by your activist base is like putting chum in the water for sharks, and that this is going to lead to competition and someone challenging her in the next election.
Well, but you said rightly so that she had endorsed by both sides, and so I think that's been her challenge: is where's that middle ground if I've got both sides? And I think, unfortunately, with this issue, there really isn't a middle ground. You're either for rent control or you're not, and you've got to kind of be. It's more binary than what people want it to believe, and so. And I think that's the challenge that she has, because the council is unfortunately probably going to approve a rent control bill, and I think that's going to be really bad for the county.
Well, that's a great segue to Mark, because the city of Gaithersburg, which has its own independent jurisdiction, has come out publicly in opposition to either of the proposed rent control bills because of, in their words, this is the Gaithersburg government's own words, there's a chilling effect on development. There will be greater tenant turnover as landlords seek to maximize rental income from new tenants whose rent is not subject to control, and landlords will skimp on maintenance in order to maximize profits. So is Mike correct? We're going to have rent control whether anybody wants it or not?
Well, I think Mike pointed out on a prior show the idea that the fact that we had two bills reflected the fact that most council members, or majority of council members, thought that there was going to be some kind of legislation there. I agree with you, Casey, that it's unfortunate, and it's a sort of a question of what it ends up looking like. I having lived in New York and experienced that, my observation would be that this system, whatever rent control system you have, ends up getting gamed by tenants, gamed by landlords, gamed by everybody who comes in contact with it, and it has adverse results. The challenge, though, is it takes time for those problems to become apparent. It doesn't become obvious right away that development isn't taking place. It doesn't become obvious right away that maintenance isn't being maintained. It isn't obvious right away that, tenants that might have moved because they didn't need the space anymore didn't move because they didn't want to give up a cheaper rent. So unfortunately, some of the adverse consequences take a while to become apparent.
Well, I mean, we have a housing crisis in Montgomery County that which everybody acknowledges. And this is counterproductive, in my opinion, is counterproductive to solving that housing challenge. Mike, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, I think that the real challenge that we have is, and we've talked about this before, we don't have much job growth right now in Montgomery County. We don't have much population growth in Montgomery County. We haven't seen any real economic gains in Montgomery County. And so you've got, and we have seen that, how there's a housing shortage. And so you have a lot of challenging issues kind of happening at one time. And there's really not a strategy for those first four that I named. And so what do? Well, we can put rent control in place because that allows us to pull a lever and show we did something. And I think the reality is that you've got to start to there's got to be a plan and a vision for how do these things fit holistically, because once you start putting caps on things, it does take a long time for this to play out. But that, in conjunction with the other things that we're already seeing, portends not a very, very good looking future for the next 4 or 5 years in Montgomery County or beyond.